Welcome, everyone, to Paranormal Round Table, PRT for short. That's what we call it. That's the show. My name is Josh Turner. They call me Wolf. Some people call me a jerk, whatever you want to call me, but just don't call me late for dinner. So anyways, corny jokes aside, here we go. We have a website. It's prtpodcast.com and Josh Turner at prtpodcast.com. That's my email address. And you can also hit me up on Messenger if you're on Facebook. If you're not a friend of mine on Facebook and you listen to the show, send me a friend request and I'll approve it as long as I know that you're a listener. Otherwise, I'm not going to approve it. And you can follow me on Instagram, Josh Turner 940. Josh Turner 940. We'll have the address hopefully up on the screen for this episode, but I have an email. I have a mailing address you can send things to. I believe it's 6001 West Palmer Lane, Suite 370, I believe, PMB 131, Austin, Texas 78727. So we have many groups on Facebook. Also, we have we have our main group, which is Paranormal Round Table, and then we have another group, which is Paranormal Encounters, which is Tony Mushu. That's his group. And then we have Paranormal Lounge, which is Nellie's and Quad Coalition Sciences, which is Nick Valente. And then Ryan Tremblay has Whisper to a Scream. And then John King has Paranormal Truckers. And then Della Carter and Phil Stern have a group called Werewolf Dogman Discussion. I'm in that group. And then there's a couple of them from the North American Dogman Project with D.A. Roberts and Nick Valente that I'm in. And that I'm an admin in all these groups, put it that way. And then, of course, there's the Paranormal Prayer Group, which Nellie started. And then there is also there is a PRT Wolf Turner PRT fan page, which was created by Chris Clough, Phil Stern, and Curtis Turner, and them. They're always memeing me and doing all kinds of silly stuff on there. And so you can go and join that. I feel kind of weird sending invites to people to that group just because I don't want people thinking I'm stroking my ego and go, oh, you got a fan page for yourself, whatever. But, anyway, I didn't build it. Someone else did. And so, anyway, you can join all those groups. There's a multitude of groups that I'm an admin of. And you can follow us on all these different platforms. We do drop this podcast, the Friday podcast, on 12 different platforms. And we have thousands of listeners on those platforms. And then we have YouTube, which is, like I said, we have a live stream that we do every Tuesday. It's between 7:30 and 8. Sometimes we start a little after 8. Sometimes we start a little before. And it goes for 2 or 3 hours. And we're on there just consistently every Tuesday. And you'll get 2 to 3, sometimes even 4 hours of bonus content, depending on the guests we have and the stories that we tell. And so that all being said, getting all that out of the way, one last thing. We do drop these episodes on an official link on our Paranormal Roundtable group page, or not group page, the group on Paranormal Roundtable group. And the link will be to this show, and you go and you leave a comment. That's all you got to do is go on there to Paranormal Roundtable group on Facebook, leave a comment to the show, and you might be chosen to win a free prize, which they're pretty cool. It could be swag. It's always going to be an autographed book, but you could maybe win some swag, like hoodies, T-shirts, hats, whatever. And we always give away stickers and things like that. And we have a Patreon. And I've got to remember to push the Patreon because Anthony's always on me about it. I forget about it. We have a $3, $5, $10, and $20 tier on the Patreon. If you want to be a supporter of the show, that's a good way to help us support the show. And so you will, if you do a $20 Patreon subscription, you will be given some swag automatically. And if you have the $10 one and you go 3 months, then we give you some swag too. So that's the rules we set for that, and your name will come up as one of the producers of the show. We mention your name or your handle, whatever you want to be called, on the YouTube live stream at the beginning of the show. We always announce everybody that helps support the show. And if you don't want your name being mentioned because you don't want you're like, man, I don't want these people knowing that I'm into this weird stuff and whatever, then you can call yourself Bubblicious Fish Eye. We don't really care. We'll just say whatever, So that being said here, my guest from last week, he's back tonight. Kevin Panee, you want to say hello, Kevin?
Hey, Josh, how's it going? How's
Everybody. So Kevin and me were talking last week about, I think we left off and we were talking about the ancient Polynesians, and they were traveling from different places, and the Vikings, and we got into all kinds of cool stuff. We talked about a boat called the Kontiki, which was really just a raft. It was a glorified raft. And this guy, Thor Heyerdahl, had proven that they actually could sail from South America to the Polynesian islands and back and forth. And now, Kevin, we also talked about the shark people, the Shark King, and his son. And so if you missed that first episode, go back and check it out. It's going to be it's a lot of fun. So, but now this episode, we're going to get into a little different stuff, switching gears from the sharks and the shark people. Kevin, you are like you said, a squatcher. You're a lot of things. You're an ex-military vet, right? Retired military, yeah. And so you go dive for shark teeth, which is very interesting.
We dig them up.
Dig them up. Okay, all right. I thought you were out there diving like your ancestors. Oh, okay. Never mind.
You gotta go 100. You gotta go over like 100 feet down. No, thank you.
I thought, man, that's what you were doing, dude. I thought you just had like a knife, like in a shark skin, and you were just like basically in a loincloth, and you were diving down like Tarzan, and you were digging. Yeah. You were digging. You were stabbing tiger sharks at 200 meters, and then coming up with their, and taking out their teeth. That's what I thought. That was the image that I was. Yeah. So, anyways, I did actually get some necklaces from you guys, and they were really cool. And everybody kept, hitting me up about them. And I guess you guys don't sell them anymore, right?
I have a few that I can make into necklaces and sell them if I had to.
Yeah, and I'm going to wear mine on the Tuesday live stream before the show when we air this, so I can show everybody, because everybody's going to ask. So I'm going to have to wear it and be like, here it is right here. So yeah, and so I wear them sometimes when I'm just out knocking around doing stuff, and I'll get people that'll ask me about it. And somebody asked me about it the other day. I went to this food truck that we like to go to downtown, and I was wearing one of them, and I was like, oh yeah, this is cool. These college kids were asking me, and they said, that's really neat. And, and I told them it's a prehistoric shark tooth. And it was interesting what you told me, though, because I thought I had a megalodon tooth, but I have to go back now and reevaluate that, because it is about 3.5, 4 inches long. It's very big. It's humongous. And you said that for each inch of the tooth, it's 10 feet, right, for the shark?
Right.
Yeah. So that's a 30 or 40 foot shark right there. That's unbelievable. But it may not be a meg. It may not be a megalodon. It might be something else. You said
there was more than just a megalodon. So because there was actually I think 4 officially, but the megalodon was actually the largest one out of the 3. So there's teeth from every one of them, really.
Well, and another thing too, to finish up talking about the sharks, we didn't get to this part here. We were talking about the ancestors and shark shapeshifters that are shark people and whatever. But one of the things I was gonna mention is that there are off the coast of Hawaii. There's different types of sharks. Further out into the ocean now, there are these Mako sharks that are the fastest shark, and they at some point in their lives they become very large. And they become what they call like great Makos, or I forget what they're called.
There's 2 types of Makos. There's a short fin Mako and a long fin Mako. I haven't really seen the long fin Mako, but the short fin Mako is actually the fastest one. I think like 40 miles an hour or something, like a burst. And
they can get up, and when they get bigger, they morph sort of into like a bigger, like they become like I forget what they call them. I was watching it on Shark Week. I'm like over here, like I'm a scientist or something. But I was watching it on Shark Week a couple years ago, and I remember because I like to watch Shark Week, at least what I can of it. And they were talking about these super Makos or whatever, and they like to swim around below oil rigs that are out in the in the ocean. And a buddy of mine was an underwater welder. We call him Bane. That's his nickname. But he became a power lifter, and he won all kinds of accolades, whatever. But Bane was in the water, and one of these bumped him, and that was it for him. He turned. He said it was about 16 feet long. I mean, he said it was gigantic, and it was a Mako. And you don't think of Makos and hammerheads and tigers as getting as big as great whites, they don't usually get, up into the 20, 22 feet, whatever, but they get pretty big. And some of the, like the hammerheads too, like off the coast of Hawaii, they've had some of them getting up to like 17, 18 feet. It's just
the ones they have in Bimini are the black Makos, the black hammerheads.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the largest.
Yeah,
those could get up to like 16 feet if they, The ones in Hawaii, I've seen one that was about maybe 13, 14 feet long.
It's still pretty big.
And
that's
one
still
actually,
a big animal.
He went surfing, and we told him, don't stay after dark. And when the sun goes down, you're out of the water. You're whatever. And he didn't listen to me. And he got chased out of the water, actually onto a reef by a hammerhead shark.
Oh, man. Why would anyone swim in the ocean after... You know what, though? I've seen in these silly movies and stuff where this guy and a girl, and they're always on the beach, and they're frolicking in the night, and they run into the water and swim around, and you're going like, what? Like, what? Like, what are you doing? That's when they feed. I mean, that is like...
Really sharp. That's why.
Oh, my gosh. Like one time, Kevin, I was down in South Padre Island, and I was down there with some friends, and it was like we were hanging out. My godfather had a house down there in Port Isabel, and I went down there, and I had like literally like my friends were fishing on the beach, and this was probably 25 years ago, 20 years ago. I was a young guy, and I remember it got night. And one there was like a half fish or whatever, like it was chopped in half, and I tossed it into the water because I went to about knee deep water, and I tossed it out into the water, and I just heard all this splashing and moving around, and I was like, oh no, that was it for me, dude. I was like, no way, dude, I'm done with that, man. and so you knew what those sharks were just right there trying to eat, and so. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. And I've also been on a deep sea fishing boat before, and I've seen these sharks just really large. I've seen them in their natural habitat, and I'm just like, no, I'm good, dude. And like I said in the last episode, I've seen one when I was in Port Aransas when I was a little kid. And so I did a lot of studying of sharks when I was young. I used to like the whole Jacques Cousteau and all that stuff. And then when I started learning that there were shark shapeshifters and all this other stuff, I was like, no, I'm done. I can't be in the ocean for too long. I'm not a good, I'm not an ocean person. I like the beach, and I like to go and get wet and then just go back out and just lounge.
Well, let me tell you something though. When I was growing up, of course, Jaws was a big thing, right?
Oh yeah.
And I couldn't stand being in a pool, even if it was a pool that was like way inland.
Mm-hmm.
My brother would just do the fin with his hand thing, and I'd be out of the water. So I couldn't stand being in if I was in waist deep water, I was okay. Anything up to like past that, no way. And then what did I do? I went and joined the Coast Guard. So on my second ship, it was stationed out of Hawaii. And on one of the trips, we went down to the equator, do our little thing, and came back.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when we came back over the equator, we did a swim call. Now, we're on the equator. There's no land around. It's open, deep water. I don't know how deep it is, but it's deep.
Oh, yeah.
And we had swim call. Guess what I did?
What?
Jumped in the water.
Oh, and after that, you were just...
But I did something, because that's when I was into scuba diving. We didn't have scuba dive on. We did like our masks and stuff like that, but I did have my dive knife on me just in case.
and you know what? I mean, at least it gives you some comfort, or just in case you can try
really.
to.
Not really.
No, not really.
I wouldn't be able to get that dive knife off fast enough. What are you talking about?
Oh my gosh! Well,
I still have that dive knife, and I still can't get it out of the sheath.
And that's the thing too. People don't realize sharks hit you so fast that there's no recourse, dude. It's not like the movies where they're like James Bond, they're pulling out the knife and they're attacking the shark and all this. No, dude, that's not how it works. I mean, you're pretty much
bump him on the nose.
Yeah.
Bump him on the nose. He'll go away. Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. It'll bloody your hand because they literally have little micro teeth on their skin. That's what they are. And so they rub against you, and if they rub against your bare skin, they'll make you bleed. It's like sandpaper.
they'll give you a little love tap there.
Mm-hmm. They're very dangerous animals. So changing direction a little bit here, like we were talking about the sharks. Now let's talk about the cryptids, the creatures or the legends, the spirits, and all that of Hawaii. What do you think about that? What do you got?
Well, let me clarify one thing first. Bigfoot is not in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Unless he swam 2,000 miles from California or caught a ride. No, I don't. When the BR4, what's
the BFRO.
What's that one that show that he's finding Bigfoot?
Finding Bigfoot, yeah.
With the boy, I'm like, yeah, you guys gonna find Bigfoot, all right? Be some guy with big feet. I don't know.
So you don't believe that there is a cryptid Bigfoot type creature in Hawaii?
Now there is a story that I remember reading, because I was raised in a time when you had to read books, and we had no internet, so we had books. So there was this book that I was reading. I remember reading about legends and stuff like that, and stories back in I think it was either the 1700s or I think it was the 1800s, maybe the 1860s around there, whatever. When there was a lot of cattle in Hawaii, when that was the main thing back then was cattle. So if you picture Waikiki, the main drag down there, you see all the tourists and everything, all the stores and all that. Well, that was actually where they used to run the cattle through. But on the islands, like on the Big Island and then even down to Oahu, most of the land was all cattle country.
Yeah, and pineapples. They did a lot.
Not yet.
No, it wasn't there yet. Dole hadn't showed up yet.
Well, Dole, I can get into the about Sanford Dole. He don't like that guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, Sanford Dole was he had a hand in something that shouldn't have happened. Anyway, they would put they would let the cows out at night, and they would have to have guys watch them. And there was actually a story about this one guy who was they would sleep out in these, it's like a cabin, but it was like as well rustic as you can get. It was just 4 walls, roof, and that's it. I mean, it was that they had nothing out there. And one night there's this creature who very similar. He looked a lot like Bigfoot. He wasn't really hairy. He was a giant, but he was also a cyclops.
Oh wow!
But they were having problems with the cows coming up missing. Not body parts or anything, but they would just be completely like, if they had 60 head, it'd be like 50 head by the morning. So all these cows kept coming up, missing, and they're like, what's going on? So finally there's this lone cowboy up there at night, and this thing came and visited him. So that's the only thing I can remember. I can't remember the whole story, but that's the only thing I can remember that was, if anything, giant, like a giant person being there. Other than that, not really.
You see, one time I was at a restaurant here in Austin. That's a place called Kirby Lane, and it's not one of my favorite places, but it used to be open 24 hours, so I went there. Now there's nothing. They don't even open 24 hours. I have no reason to go there, but it's not really anything special. But we would hang out there sometimes, to go late at night because, like I said, it was open. And so we were there, and there was this waiter that we got to be friends with. He was from Hawaii, and we didn't become like buddies or anything like that. I don't consider him like a friend. He was just like an acquaintance that I'd met from the restaurant, and he was quite a bit younger than us. But he was telling us a story that when he had some friends that came out there to visit, because he was in the military, and when he got out, he had made some friends, and so he invited them to come to Hawaii. And I believe this happened on the Big Island. And they were walking around in this like forested area, and they came upon this creature, and he's like, I'll never forget as long as I live. He said it was standing on all fours, kind of like a gorilla, but he said that it was not a gorilla, and that it had a more human-like face, but a protruding muzzle, sort of. He said that the back legs were way shorter than the front, what should have been the front legs. It was on all fours, but it was like the front limbs were really long, and it was kind of walking on its knuckles. And he said it was like if you pictured like a man that was more like a gorilla, the way he described it. And he was like, I don't know what it was. He goes, but we saw it. And he said that it was about 5 foot at the shoulders on all fours. He goes, it had to have been some sort of giant when it stood up. He didn't describe it so much as a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot or like the reports you get in the Northwest, of Bigfoot. That's not what this was. But he described it as sort of a troglodyte, throwback looking, prehistoric man, but like more ape-like. And he was like, I don't know what it was, man. And it made this awful, howling noise. And he said that they all just turned and ran in different directions. And then they came out of the wooded area where they were at, which was like it was like a trail. It was like some place where like a park or something. And it's been years when they told me that story. And when I went there that night, I will be honest, I had been out drinking with my friends. So I didn't think to pull out a recorder and record him and I didn't have my notebooks or whatever. So I had to go from memory. And when I got back to my house, I just wrote down what I remembered him saying, because I get stories from people all the time when I go out and do stuff.
I mean, especially on the Big Island, and Oahu, you don't really get a lot of that because it's all, say, industrialized, got a lot of buildings and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But on the Big Island, there's a lot of places out there that have basically been untouched. Mm-hmm. I mean, forever. So,
yeah, and I know that two of my friends stayed there, like I said, for probably a decade each, and they both came back with attachments, stuff on them. Like, one of my friends he actually took his own life in 2011, unfortunately. And it's very sad. He raised his family there for, over a decade. One of the problems though with Hawaii, and people don't realize this, is that you're not supposed to take anything from it. I'm not talking about buying something from a souvenir shop. Everybody does that. What I'm talking about is
that's the Big Island. That's the Volcano National Park.
Yeah.
There's actually when Melissa's over here waving at me in the background. When we were in high school, we went to the Big Island on a class trip or a club trip. It was a hiking club, and one of the places we went to was the Volcano National Park Museum. And in the museum, and as soon as you walk in the door, there's this big glass case of letters and items that people sent back from the mainland with stories of what happened when because they would take lava rocks from, like, because there's this place called the Devastation Trail. And it's really long. We walked it when I was a little kid, but you go on and see, you can literally, you can bend down, and probably not now because the volcano probably took part of it out, but you can bend down, you can grab rocks, whatever, parking lot, whatever, and they would take it home as a souvenir. Well, bad stuff would happen to them. Yeah. Like your friend, or even like broken bones, or car accidents, or people in their lives, or something. And they would send these things back, even these shoes, with rocks and stuff like that, or rock, and the story of what happened to them when they, and once they, once they send it back to Hawaii, they're like, okay, now you're good. So yeah, it's mostly the Big Island and the Volcano National Park. The Big Island and Maui are pretty much, actually all the islands, they're pretty much Pele's. That's her territory.
Yeah, and Pele is the volcano goddess or whatever.
Yeah, and I think it was, when was it? I think it was 87? No, 80, 84, 85 or something like that. There was a fireball. And people reported it. It was on the news. It was in the newspapers and everything. And the legend goes that Pele could shapeshift. She can come at you as a beautiful girl. She can come at you as an old woman. She could come at you, or she could shapeshift into a fireball. And that's how she is said to have traveled from island to island. Is she would take the form of a fireball she'd fly across the sky, and there was actually a fireball that was seen by a lot of people that flew, I think, from Oahu and went towards the Big Island. So I went south, and the volcano erupted. Kilauea erupted. Her house, her main island is Maui. Volcano on Maui is Haleakala. That's her house. It's the house of the rising sun. That's her. That's where that's her place. But there's been a couple times, like when we talk about cryptids, that I guess you could call her a cryptid. I guess.
Well, especially if she can shapeshift. I mean,
yeah, because a lot of times the stories go that she would, like her sister, and her brother's actually the shark god too.
Mm-hmm.
But her sister Hiyaka was kind of a promiscuous type. So she would do a lot of things to her boyfriends, or Pele would. But Pele is that she was you didn't want to piss her off. She would do things and like bad things to you. So, and like I said, like when we were there in 1987, the volcano was erupting, and it hasn't stopped since. So, yeah, that's that. Yeah. So Pele, I guess, would be. There's not really, like I said, there's not really a lot of cryptids over there. I mean, there's a lot of stories about like Pig God. That's Kamapua'a. It's one of my favorite ones, actually.
Kamapua'a.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Kamahoali is that how I say it right? He's the shark god, right?
Yeah, he's a shark god.
Yeah, he's the one that gave birth. And then last episode we talked about, he's the one that gave birth to Nana, which is
Nanawe.
Yeah, whatever. I can't say it right, but he's the one that was devouring his friends or whatever, and he was the shark. But the legends, like I said, we talked about the Maori in New Zealand. They go all the way across the Polynesian. The shark king or shark god. He bred and had children, and then of course this race of beings, and if people will think, well, this is crazy, it's fantastical, but if you believe in the Nephilim, I mean, there would be in the ocean too. I mean, according to legend, there's 3 gates to hell, and one of them is in the ocean. So, I mean, it's the water is not to be messed with, and it's a very man, I'm telling you. It's a scary, scary place, dude. And when you're out of place, that's out of place when we're in the ocean. And you talked in the last episode about being knocked off your surfboard, and I had a similar story from somebody who had told me years ago. But you were knocked off a boogie board, same thing. But the thing is, we are literally so far down on the food chain, it's not even funny. And we think, we're big, strong people, whatever. It doesn't matter, But so we have Pele, who is the volcano god, and we have the shark god, and all these different gods. But there is one thing I was going to talk about, and I don't know if you know a whole lot about this, but there's the legend in Hawaii in mythology called the Night Marchers.
Oh yeah, I'm very familiar with that.
Yeah, and now I know that they honor that there were the Night Marchers were from an ancient tradition of Hawaiian warriors, and I believe do what?
They're basically ancient warriors that if they appear to you, or if you cross their path and you didn't give them
respect.
If you didn't, what we were told to do when we were kids, because my growing up again in Hawaii and going to my grandparents' house, my grandfather, there was on the property on the east side of the property, there's a row of tea leaves. Now, tea leaves in Hawaii are used for a lot of things, medicinal things, for wrapping food or whatever, cooking, whatever. But they're also used to ward off evil or bad things. So on the east side of the property, there's a long line of tea leaf plants. And growing up there's 2 houses that my grandparents had. There's a front house and the back house. The back house was my grandparents' house. That's what they built. The front house was a house that they had grown up in. So way back in the 40s, they all lived in this house. In my cousin's room on the east side of the house, in her bedroom, there's a window that's facing this, what we call their trail, the Night Marchers Trail. And I couldn't sleep in that room. My cousin could, everybody else could. I could never sleep in that room for that reason. So basically what it is that if the Night Marchers, if you see, usually what would happen is you hear drums. If you hear drums beating, you either leave the area or you get down and you don't look up.
Yeah, you don't look at them.
Yeah, you lay completely flat, like your face is in, and you don't look at them. You don't say anything. You don't do anything. You just let them pass. If they do see you, or if you kind of like, hey, what's this? And you look up and you see, and they look at you, they take you.
Yeah. And there's also legends supposedly that if you don't die, then you will die a violent death. You know?
Well, another thing is if you look at them while they're passing by, if they look at you, or if you look at them and they look back at you, and they don't do anything, that means that there's somebody in that in that procession
you're related to.
Ancestor,
yeah.
That he says like, okay, he's cool, let him go, type of thing. So, but normally, I mean, I've never heard drums at night, thank God, because that's one thing I never wanted to deal with Night Marchers.
Yeah, the Night Marchers. People report smelling like a foul odor, like of death. And they say that some of them even come up out of the ocean and they'll walk out into a long line. If they died in the ocean, they'll do what?
They're following their, like if they're going to a fight, okay,
yeah,
and they're following a certain trail or a certain path, that's the one they know. So if it happens to go through your house or go through a building or go through your property or go through the ocean, because that's where they used to walk at. So.
And their feet, they say that their feet don't even touch the ground.
Nope,
it's like they're walking. Yeah. It's crazy.
My father was working. He used to work at the Chevron refinery over there on the west side of the island. And when one night he came, he told us about one night because he had to go up on the tank and check whatever on top of the tank. So you have these long ladders or long stairs, whether you go up. And when he was looking back towards, this place is called Makaha. It's a big hill. It's got like houses all over it. But back then they didn't have any houses on this hill. He said he saw a line of torches coming down the hill, like, come down and zigzag down. And of course, he was like miles away. He's at the refinery. He's basically right by the ocean. And he told us that. I was like, my mom was like, that was Night Marchers.
Wow.
That was Night Marchers.
And the purpose of it too, it's to honor the gods, I think it is. And I don't know exactly which. And I know there's 4 gods that they honor, and I know it's not Pele or the shark god.
It's not really to honor a god. It's more like that's their path. It's like what they call residual haunting, sort of. But
yeah.
If you say that in Hawaii, they're like, yeah, right. It's not. No, those are it's real. It's happening, but it's more like it's their memory of where they were or where they walk at. So I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there's different ways to interpret the Night Marchers. The way I was raised to believe it was that they don't mess with them. Period. You don't look at them. You don't speak to them. You just let them go.
Yeah.
Just let them be, and they'll leave you alone.
And I know that one of the gods associated with it is Canaloa. And I always thought he was pretty interesting because he was like a squid or octopus type creature. And he's also associated with the underworld. And I don't really know a whole lot about the others. I know Loa or Lona, I think I'm not for sure. I think it's the god of earth or I think it's the peaceful god. And then Canaloa is like the god of the underworld. And I know there's like Cain. Yeah, and I'm not for sure about the others, but I know that those are.
Kane would be, he's like the one that's in charge of life, basically.
Which one is it?
Kane.
Kane.
It's Kane. So yeah,
Kane. Okay, yeah, because I've only read about it when I was young, and I haven't.
Kane. Lono is like the god of. Oh, how can you say this? It's hard.
It's the god of the ocean. I know that. It's like he's
my grandmother's probably rolling in her grave right now. Like, I don't know this stuff. But the funny thing about Lono is when Captain Cook visited the islands back in 1718 or something like that. Anyway, he, because as he's pulling into Kealakekua, Hawaii, where he actually ended up getting killed and eaten, the natives were like, "Oh, what's this big canoe coming in?" They see these white, the sails are white.
Yeah,
and to them, that's Lono. So they thought he was a god. So that's one of the reasons why that's one of the many reasons why he was killed and eaten, because they thought, well, hey, if we eat this guy, he's a god, we'll get his powers.
Yeah.
They probably got him. I don't know.
And instead, all they got was the runs.
Probably.
Well, I always thought it was interesting when you talk about the shark like Nanawe, the son of I don't want to butcher this name. Kamaloa. Kamahoali'i. Okay, and his son was Nanawe, right? Nanau. Okay, I can't.
Nanawe.
Okay, Nanawe. Okay, so his son Nanawe. All right. So when he, when he was born, I thought it was interesting in the story. There's different versions, of course, to all these stories. And I know that one of the stories I read was that he was not supposed to eat pork. Now, I thought that was very interesting because pork is supposed to be close to human flesh. And I thought that it was very interesting that they told him not to eat pork. So, yeah. So, because if he ate pork, then supposedly he would develop a taste for human flesh.
Right.
And then he would do what?
They ate dogs too.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, I was reading a book about Papua New Guinea and how they eat, humans are called long pig, and I was like, that's great, and same thing there too. They eat dogs, they eat, whatever. And
make a note, Papua New Guinea.
Do what?
Make a note not to go to Papua New Guinea.
Papua New Guinea, yeah, don't end up there. And they have all kinds of cannibalistic traditions, and I'm sure that at some point there were cannibal tribes too. Now I know that King, what is his name? Kamehameha. One of the things I read about years ago was that he when he was fighting against some of the other tribes, they were tribes that had come from other lands and had settled in those islands, and some of them were cannibals, and so he was trying to wipe them out.
I would.
Yeah, and so I don't know if that's the truth, and like what history's written by the winners, so
I don't think so. I mean, most of the people, most of the tribes that lived on the islands, like there's a famous battle that took place on Oahu, Battle of Nu'uanu, which is actually, it's kind of funny because, not funny, but there's the old way over that my grandparents used to drive into Honolulu was they would take the Nu'uanu Pass, which was basically you come up through the valley, you go up into the mountain, and it's basically like a knife edge mountain, and they would go over the road right there. Well, the road was taken out like years ago because they built another road below it with a tunnel, which is less safer to go. But at that point, on the at the end of it, basically, there's a cliff they call the Poly, the Poly Lookout. There's actually a lookout there. You can actually drive up there, park your car, walk up, and you can look down onto the Kaneohe side of the island, or the windward side of the island. And that's the path that Kamehameha took when he basically chased the other army up that valley. Now, the thing about Kamehameha was that his army had muskets and cannons.
Mm-hmm.
The other army didn't. So, guess who had the advantage, right?
Yeah.
So he chased these guys up the cliff, or up the valley towards the cliff, and he basically told them, either you join me, or you guys are gonna go flying over that cliff. We don't care. Nobody wanted to do it, but they do. They started firing. They fired their muskets at him. They fired the cannons at him, and off they went. And a lot of times, my grandmother would say that when you go out there, sometimes you can hear them. You can hear the battle. You can hear the screams. You can hear the men dropping over the side of the cliff. It is a high cliff too, and it's really, really windy up there. But yeah, that's my answers for you.
Yeah, and I know that it happened in the 1700s, like the late 1700s, and I believe that one of the reasons why, I mean, of course, everything is propaganda, but one of the reasons why he was, he used, I thought, was because he had gotten weapons, he had gotten arms from dealing with, different, like the English, and I think he ended up getting some help from China and some different. Mm-hmm. He traded with different,
It was mostly I would say England and maybe France.
Yeah.
Towards the later years, but to begin with, it was England.
Yeah. But he used the excuse of war against them. I believe, though, that one of the excuses was that they were savages and that they were cannibals. And so he convinced them, hey, I need weapons to do this. And that's just what I read. I don't know if it's true.
No, what it was is he wanted to unite the islands. And the only way he could do that was through war.
Yeah.
So he would actually send like maybe 3 war parties out on his war canoes to like 3 different islands. And his generals or his closest friends who was in charge of the armies, he would then go to each island and he'd conquer it. The only thing is on Maui, he actually had some relatives that lived on an island that were actually against him. So yeah, it didn't turn out so good for them either. But yeah, he's kind of like he's our big legend, really.
Yeah. But the mistake though that he made was I believe he agreed to give England like the big island or something after it was over, and that was a mistake because the English agreed to help him. And I know that later on though the trade routes opened up, and I know that there were Portuguese and French, and then there were Chinese and Japanese and different traders that came at different times, and it opened Hawaii up. But I think it was a mistake though to allow the English to help him, because they did seize part of the territory, and that became a problem. But that's history, But what we're talking about right now, you were talking about the night. You were telling me about the night marchers. You said that you slept in a room that was on the path of them. Oh my gosh. And so as a kid, so let's picture this. As a kid, you were told about the night marchers, right? And then your room was in their path.
Yeah, it was my cousin's room.
Uh-huh.
That was like right on the east side of the house. And right maybe 5 feet away from that in the yard, there was a path there.
Oh.
Nothing is like really funny because there was nothing there as far as just grass. But like I said, my grandfather had planted tea leaves along there it was kind of a protection thing.
Like a hedge. Yeah, that's what I heard, that they would plant shrubs and things as a hedge against them.
Yeah, so it was kind of it was, trust me, I didn't like walking in that yard.
Oh,
I still don't like.
Oh man, that had to be scary.
Yeah.
So let me ask you. Okay, so we've talked about some really interesting things here. So and going back to what we just said, the Hawaiians, they thought that Captain Cook was Lono, like the god of the earth and peace and.
Yeah, they thought he was a god, so that's where they're like, oh hey, come on.
And and he was peaceful, I guess, at first, so they thought that's what it was.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, he was.
His officers were, but the sailors on the ship weren't.
Yeah, they were, disorderly. Of course, they're sailors, and so then did they eat all of them or just Captain Cook?
Just him, I think. Yeah, they just ate him.
And that's where the word cook comes from, folks. I'm just kidding. They ate him raw. But they cooked the long pig. No, it's so crazy that the history and the stories and the legends of Hawaii are so fascinating. It's like there's so much legend there and so much story. Okay, real quick question. Now, I have gotten a couple UFO reports from Hawaii too. One of them involved, I think it was the island of not Oahu. It was Maui, and somebody that went to Maui. Now this was a secondhand report, but they said that they were out on a boat, and they were looking at the turtles or something, and they saw a light kind of going around in 360 degrees, like just spinning around below the waves, and it was in daylight, but they could see a light down there. And then, okay, and that was weird. That was just a story that I was given. But I also got one. This one happened near Oahu, and I think it was near the volcano. And somebody claimed that they saw a UFO coming up over the top of it. And
there's one, two, three. There's four volcanoes on that island.
Yeah,
that extinct. But Diamond Head, which is the main one, has like for a time it had like a military thing there. I think either Army or Navy or something like that. Like a I want to say a listening post, but they had something up there. It was restricted, I know, because I used to go up there. I used to go by this place all the time on my way home, and there'd be a gate there. It would say no, no unauthorized access or whatever else, something like that. But I've not seen a UFO in Hawaii, but I have seen them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't recall seeing anything. I mean, when the space shuttle flew over, I know it made a sonic boom that pretty much took out my mom's pictures.
Wow.
It shook the whole house.
So, so in your opinion, there might have been giants in Hawaii, maybe when they showed up, when the first Polynesians showed up in the islands. Do you think that they had to face these creatures? And maybe that's what that was. That story that was the last of these giants.
Probably because right at that point when the cattle was in Hawaii, I mean, you're talking like 1800s, like late 1800s, early 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
So by then, most of the island was populated, especially Oahu.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're talking about, and then there's a lot of land that was used up and taken and whatever, for other things. So like pineapple. But yeah, that's the one thing I remember. I forgot what book it was. My mom had a library of these books like this and stories and stuff like that. So it was just stories that was, she found, she had, and she passed it on to us, and you know how it goes, like that, stuff like that. But that one stuck out to me because in that book was an illustration of this guy sitting at the fire, and he's in the cabin, and here's this big thing sitting right there. It's like, okay, that, I don't want to run into that. But yeah,
would. Oh, man.
I wouldn't want to.
Yeah. And so
these
and like when people have told me different stories. Like I said, I know a few people from there, and I know one of my friends in particular ended up with a really nasty attachment that he went to a shaman, and they told him that, and this was a Buddhist shaman that told him that when he spent time in Hawaii, that this entity climbed onto him and it stayed on him for a long time. And he ended up having to try to get it taken off, get it removed, whatever. And I know that a buddy of mine was one of my best friends ever. He lived there for a long time, and he was never the same. When he came back from Hawaii, he had a severe depression, which ultimately led to him taking his life. But it was a very sad situation. And I always felt like that Hawaii did something to him. And I really believe this, and I'm not joking. I think that Hawaii it's okay to visit, but I think if you're not from there, you really shouldn't live there. And I think, because I noticed that what happens to a lot of the people that aren't really from there, and I think the term is haole. Is that what they call them?
Haole, yeah.
Yeah. So when you're not really supposed to live there, and I really believe that. I just have this feeling that I've always felt about that place, is that it's okay to visit, but leave. You're not supposed to stay there, and you don't belong there, honestly, if you're not a Hawaiian. And I know a lot of people are listening, maybe say, oh, that's not correct, whatever. But, one of my friends that stayed there for a while, he was Hispanic, and he said, dude, there was a lot of weird things that happened to him when he came back. Another one of my friends, he was half Hispanic, half white. And then another one of my friends was half Algonquin. His mother was an Algonquin Indian. His dad was, and he felt like there was a very strong native presence there that was not happy with non-Hawaiian people being there.
Well, that goes back to 1893, because when like I said, like I don't like Dole, the guy who did that. His name was Sanford Dole. He was a senator.
Mm-hmm.
Him and Lauren Thurston, they pretty much overthrew the government. They overthrew the king and or queen. Okay, the king actually ended up dying because he basically a broken heart. Well, he actually had some other health issues going on, but he died. And then the queen, who was basically it for the empire right there, or the kingdom, they were like, nah, yeah, right. So they had a whole bunch of people come in, Marines and all this kind of stuff, and they put her under house arrest, and she actually died alone and brokenhearted. So there's a lot of things that happened. The Hawaiians were treated like second-rate citizens. They couldn't vote
in their own country, in their own land.
Do anything if they couldn't. If they owned land, it's not your land anymore. If you couldn't speak English, you couldn't do anything. So yeah, there's a lot of animosity towards a lot of
and the imperialists, basically, yeah, because that's what it was imperialism, colonialism, and it was yeah, and so I've always had this weird feeling though about Hawaii that it was just like you're not really supposed to be there, and you're not supposed to. Going and visiting a place is not the same as settling down and trying to live there,
If you go to the tourist traps, you're good.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and the Hawaiian people welcome that because they make money from that. But when you start trying to live and go and be like you're there, because you're really not from there. I mean, that's not your land. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, I don't know, like here in Texas, there's areas that I'll go to, and people will say those areas were inhabited by the Comanches, and some people have reported all kinds of weird things happening there. Like at the Devil's Backbone, they'll feel weird. They'll have all this weird energy, and they'll feel unwelcome. And I've never had that feeling when I've gone to these Comanche areas because my grandmother's Comanche, so I don't feel it. And I honestly think because of my grandmother's heritage of being a full-blood Comanche, I don't go there and feel unwelcome. I think that they, your ancestors or the spirits or whatever that energy is there. I think it recognizes who's supposed to be there. And
well, that's the thing about like if you ever go to Hawaii, And I told all my friends that were on the ship, and because a lot of them weren't never. It's the first time they've ever been in Hawaii, so I told them, do not go to the west side of the island. They do not like you there.
Yeah. West side.
They don't even like locals there. I mean, literally. I mean, there was an altercation years ago between my family and a family that was there on the west side of the island. It was one beach.
Mm-hmm.
And about a week after this altercation happened, about a week or two, my uncle, who was white, at the beach down there, there was he tied his boat up over there because he was a fisherman, and he went out one day fishing for marlin. He came back, his truck was on fire.
Oh my gosh!
They set his truck on fire because those people remembered that truck. And then the funny thing is, I'd say about 100 yards away was a police station. But they do not like people from
the mainland.
And I told my friends too, I was like, do not, if you go there, you better go there with somebody that knows the place. Like me, I would go with them. So.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, if I go to Hawaii, I'm going to definitely have you come with me, so we don't, I don't have to get messed with by the spirits and by the night marchers and Dole and all that. I'm just kidding.
You're gonna pay for my plane ticket? Me and Melissa?
Well, it depends. It depends on what the package includes. What do we get to visit these places? Do we get to see the giants, and do we get to? I mean, we got to be able to. I want to meet the Shark King too. I want to be able to do all. I want to do it all.
I just drop in the water. He'll probably
he'll probably come up and eat me. Like this looks like a fat little seal. Let me just eat this dude. No, I'm good. I'm not into the water, dude. Like I said, I'll be on the beach and chill out. Maybe fish or something. But just flapping around in there. That's not. I look like a walrus, dude.
I can take you to Sharks Cove.
What is that?
That's my favorite beach in the whole world.
And
it's on the west side. It's on the north shore of Oahu.
Mm-hmm.
It is a long time ago. The reason why it's named Sharks Cove was because it's basically there's a cove. There's actually a cove in there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's about 30, 40 feet deep, maybe. Okay. And back then is when the sharks would come in there, and that's where they would birth.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm good. I don't want to go to that place. I'm okay.
Right next to the cove, there's this reef. I call it an enclosed reef. Okay, so there's water in there. I mean, you want fish? There's fish. You can't fish in there, but you want to see fish? That's where to go.
Mm.
Okay,
but apparently there's sharks there too.
No, there's no sharks. I've seen a shark there.
Okay,
because they have Patty. They have scuba classes.
Mm-hmm.
They go. That's where they go to for the open water test.
Oh, okay.
So, but this place is jam packed with people sometimes, and people they have snorkels and masks, and all you do is float. You're in maybe knee deep water, maybe chest deep water, some places, and they just float and they watch all the fish.
I mean, I'm a great swimmer. I'm a strong swimmer, but I don't like.
You don't have to be a strong swimmer because Melissa's not a strong swimmer.
Oh, I am. My wife's not. My wife is not. I actually taught my wife how to swim. I taught her how to swim, dude. We were on a trip, and I said we were in all these different pools. I said you're going to learn.
The last time we were home, we went to Sharks Cove. Of course, I didn't. I just go in the water. I don't care. But she had a inner tube. So she floats to the inner tube. All she does is stick her face in the water. That's about it. That's as close as she gets. Me, I'm in there. I'll dive into the water. But I can't do that. I can't do that anymore because I'm too old.
I've never met a Hawaiian though that didn't like water. Like I've known several Hawaiians, and 2 or 3 that I've actually claimed as my friends that I've known.
I am going to tell you something, Josh, and please, I'll let it out for the world. You want to hear something really funny?
What's up?
So I'm retired Coast Guard.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when in 1988, so my mom, I told my mom and dad, I was like, I want to join the Coast Guard. Mama took one look at me and goes, why join the Coast Guard? You can't swim.
But you learn, you know. I mean, like, right? You learn.
So well, okay. So I had to go to New Jersey, Cape May, New Jersey for boot camp, and one of our tests is a swim test. It's an Olympic-sized pool. We had to swim around the perimeter of the pool. Okay. Guess who flunked his first test?
Oh my gosh. And they're like, you're Hawaiian. I mean, a Hawaiian that can't swim, like, that's like a cowboy who doesn't punch cattle. You know what I mean?
The instructor was like, where are you from? Hawaii. He's
like, where are you from? He's like, don't be lying. Don't be lying, Hawaiian.
I had to retake the test, but thank God I passed I passed the second test. I am not kidding you. That is exactly what happened.
Wow.
I don't know how I did it, but I flunked the first. I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" Even my dad was laughing at me, like, because I called him. And he's like, "Are you serious?"
It's like, you have brought shame to our family. You wait till I tell the night marchers. Oh man,
that's one thing I didn't have to worry about in New Jersey with night marchers.
Yeah, at least and you're living in North Carolina now, though. But I mean, folks, so that's all the time we got tonight. Kevin, it's been awesome. Now, what we're going to do, Kevin is a squatcher, folks. So what we're going to do is we're going to have Kevin come on the Tuesday live stream and talk about his Bigfoot experiences and his stuff that's happened to him with the squatching. And so we're going to have you come on, Kevin, and we're going to do that. And it may have already you may have already talked about it by the time we air this.
Like I said, there are no Bigfoot in Hawaii.
Well, they say there's no dogman in Australia, but I've gotten reports of them, you know, and I've gotten the report I got of Bigfoot in Hawaii, though. Like I said, it sounded more like a really weird looking giant type thing. I don't know what that was. But you kind of clarified that though when you talked about the giant story, you know.
Well, like when the BR4 was there, or when they did the Finding Bigfoot show, whatever, they did the what we call our little people, the menehune.
Oh, the menehune, yeah.
That's what they were looking for. But menehune, they're short people.
Yeah.
They don't have. Well, maybe they have big feet, but they don't have that big feet.
The hobbits
they have bigger feet than they do.
Yeah. Well, that's it, go guys for PRT here, Paranormal Round Table. Me, Kevin Panee, his wife Melissa, who's been a friend of ours and a friend of the show for a long time. This lovely couple has been been friends of ours, and they are supporters of the show, and so it was my pleasure to talk to you about Hawaii and get your experiences, Kevin, and just talk about the history of it and get into the legends and the myths and the stories. I really had fun. I honestly did. This was good. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and it's been one on my to-do list. So, I'm talking to someone from there that knows the stories by heart and is as passionate about it as you are. And it was really interesting, and I learned some things, and I hope other people did too, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And so from everyone here at Paranormal Roundtable and Josh Turner, Kevin, good night.